The November 15th meeting of the Portland City Council. Please call the roll.
Udaley. Fish.
Here.
Saltzman.
I need my notebook. Here.
Fritz. Wheeler.
Where is Chloe?
Fritz.
Here. Mayor Wheeler and Commissioner Udaley filed absences, and due to their absences, we will not be able to vote on emergency ordinances or the consent agenda today. We will be able to hear communications, reports, non-emergency ordinances, and second readings on the regular agenda. So let me just, before we do communications, sort out some of the things that are going back to play, will be held over. Item 1228. Do you need to read the title of it, please?
(1228) Delay effective date of Portland's 2035 Comprehensive Plan and implementing measures from January 1, 2018 to May 23, 2018 to allow more time for state review and approval.
Thank you. Mayor Wheeler has requested this be pulled back to his office. It will be heard on November 29th. Let's see. Items 1233 and 1234 are rescheduled to November 29th. Could you read those, please?
(1233) Authorize disposal of surplus Taser X26 electronic control weapons, holsters, cartridges, and batteries, and authorize the Portland Police Bureau to proceed with donation and/or sale of property. And 1234, authorize general obligation refunding bonds through December 31, 2019.
Thank you. Those will be rescheduled to November 29th. And then finally, item 1237 is rescheduled to December 6th. Please read that one.
1237, accept a grant in the amount of $100,471 and authorize an agreement with the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission to increase network capabilities for fire stations.
Thank you. And then due to the lack of a quorum next week, there will be no meeting on November 22nd. We hope everybody has a lovely Thanksgiving. And the next meetings will be on November 29th and 30th. So if we're all keeping score at home, that's, I believe, what we...
Can I make one up?
Commissioner Fish.
Just to be clear, 1229, 1230, and 1231 will also be heard on consent on November 29th. They're all emerged. My understanding is they've all been moved to the consent agenda on the 29th.
You're right, Commissioner Fish. Thank you for catching that. Do you need to read those as well?
No, we're rescheduling the balance of the consent to November 29th.
The 29th?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
All right. I think that's it. Thank you very much for your patience. Please read the first communications item.
Item 1223, a request of Larry Quick to address council regarding an emergency public health and safety matter in the Goose Hollow neighborhood.
Mr. Quick? Maybe if he comes in before we get done. Next one, please.
1224, request of Donna Cohen to address council regarding timing of the Fessenden-St. Louis pedestrian signals in the St. John's Truck Strategy Phase 2 plan.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hello.
Just need your name, don't need your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Donna Cohen. I live in St. John's. So my compatriots on the stakeholder committee are not here for various and sundry reasons today, but we are all still awaiting a letter from Leah Treat, the head of PBOT, confirming that we will have all the pedestrian signals installed next year along with the rest of the project items from that plan. The only reason that we're still here talking about this right now is because of the complete failure of a public involvement process. And a lot of this are my personal opinions, but PBOT staff dragged the community of St. John's through a 23-month and counting process, 17 months initially, and now 5 or so since we were first told that the plan would be changed. I'm convinced that PBOT staff never had any interest in truly hearing the community. Why? Because from the outset, the freight part of the plan was paramount, as shown by the fact that the PBOT employees consisted of a project manager and the freight coordinator of PBOT. But PBOT was required to make some improvements to Fessenden St. Louis. PBOT staff basically came in and told us what they were going to do at the beginning. That was the approach. And then they fought most of the elements the community saw a need for the next 17 months. PBOT never even wanted to get the freight trucks off the corridor. They always spoke in terms of, quote, mitigation. That was the term they used consistently. And even in the application...
Pull back just a little bit from the mic, because it's diffusing your voice.
Even in the application... So you can
turn
it off. Okay.
You turned it off.
Oh,
Hit the button again. Just when you're really close, it muffles your voice.
Right. Okay, how's that?
Better.
All right. So PBOT never wanted to get the freight trucks. I talked about mitigation, and even in the funding plan that they wrote, quote, improvements for this project will reduce the incentive for using the local street system for non-local freight use. So that was not even a priority for them. And this is a street runs down the center of a 15,000 person community. There was a disagreement as to where the pedestrian signal on the west side of the curve should go. These are examples of how we were not listened to. The community thought one street, Seneca, PBOT thought another street, although they gave us no reasons. I said, let the community decide at the upcoming open house. People would be using Post-it notes to tag problem locations along the corridor. We got the raw data from the event. I counted up all mentions of Smith versus Seneca. Twice as many people said the street that I had indicated should have the signal. Yet the program manager questioned my count. Why? Who knows? But he clearly had not analyzed the data. So these are just examples of how we were not routinely listened to. So the public involvement process, in my opinion, just was corrupted. We had a rally with 50 people on October am I okay?
Yeah, keep going, because you had an interruption in the middle.
We had a rally with 50 people on October 20th. A woman came up to me to say how she had lost trust in the city. Even when we get the signals, in many ways the community and the city have lost. What should have been a 6-month process took almost 2 years and counting. Wasted time, wasted energy, wasted money, and a huge loss of trust in the city by people in St. John's. We are still waiting for the letter, and I tacked on to this material some examples of how the process did not go well, and also justification for and a request for an investigation into this process of developing this plan.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 1225, request of Star Stoffer to address council regarding conduct unbecoming of a publicly elected official and police accountability.
Where is Chloe?
Excuse me. I forgot to read. Excuse me. I forgot to read the warning at the beginning. But if there's disruption, audible things during somebody else speaking, except for your 3 minutes, then I'll have to give you a warning, and then you'll have to leave. So thank you very much, Ms. Stoffer, for being here. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Star Stoffer. Considering Chloe's not here, I'm still going to address her directly, because this is what she is what this is about. Allow me to get straight to the point. It is my assertion, as well as others, that you have and continue to engage in conduct unbecoming that of a publicly elected official.
Excuse me, Ms. Stoffer. Could you sit a little bit further back? That's it.
Our questions and concerns are as follows. Why do you frequently threaten to take litigious actions as a tool to deter constituents from pursuing questions relative to conduct unbecoming of your elected status? Why do you engage in both bullying and cyberbullying tactics against citizens on both public and private social media platforms? Why do you attack and defame constituents and journalists and use your public position to marshal supporters to also engage in similar behavior? Shame. Have you engaged and properly reported all public business with known lobbyists through the use of public or personal social media? Have you assisted known lobbyists in conducting personal financial transactions? What was the nature of your relationship, both personally and professionally, with the white supremacist Jim Goad, beyond your platforming his propaganda, Redneck Manifesto, at your store reading frenzy? Did you read any parts of Redneck Manifesto before inviting Jim Goad as a guest reader to your store? Were you not aware of his use of the N-word repeatedly in his book 27 times and counting? Why is platforming a white supremacist not a big deal to you, Chloe? Were there not several men of color that showed up sitting in the front row to protest the platforming of this racist propaganda? And did you truly believe that platforming a white supremacist was not a big deal to the community at large? Shame on you. Did you and your then partner personally fund the commissary account of known white supremacist Jim Goad when he was incarcerated for assault? Oh, and while we're at it, please explain why you let Michael Moynihan, a man recognized by the SPLC as a white supremacist, to also read at your store. And Chloe, where are your income tax returns? Chloe, your seemingly unshakable support for the Portland Police, regardless of their actions and continued clear targeting of people of color, houseless, undocumented, and those with disabilities, leaves us wondering what it would take, how many have to die, how many have to suffer before it is enough for you. And all of these questions and all this time, and winter is here again, with no real plan for our houseless neighbors. So, what exactly are you doing besides supporting clear and present dangers to a community you were elected to serve? We want answers. Because I say shame. No KKK, no fascist USA means no quarter for racist, no quarter for brutal and killer cops, and no quarter for dangerous politicians. Shame on Chloe Eudaly. Shame on Chloe Eudaly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate how everybody showed their support with thumbs up. That was very helpful. And thank you, Mustafa, for your testimony. Next one, please.
Item 1226, request of Catherine Smith to address council regarding more information, evidence of ongoing issues with the police.
Good morning, Ms. Smith. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Catherine Smith. The mayor isn't here today, and I was expecting him to be, and he's a police commissioner, so I'll probably only read like the first paragraph or so and save the rest for later, okay?
Thank you.
I'm testifying again because those tigered cops, who I've talked about before here, are still stalking, threatening, shooting me remotely every day with those microwave and ultrasound weapons mainly. They say that every day to me, they still shoot my son with these daily, especially when he's sleeping, to give him cancer. People might wonder, why do I keep testifying here trying to have the mayor talk to the police chief so she'll transfer my case? But that's all I'm going to say today, because I really want him to hear that. Although it's important for you all to hear it too, he's a police commissioner, that's why. So I'll wait until the next time.
Thank you
and
for
I'll
understanding.
probably send him an email or something.
That sounds good. Thank you very much. Last one, please.
1227, request of Stephen Green to address council regarding Pitch Black event and ongoing support for Black entrepreneurs in Portland.
Good morning, Mr. Green. Just
Good
need your
morning.
name, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes. Good morning, Commissioner Stephen Green, Portland native, recovering banker and entrepreneur here in Portland. I run an event here called Pitch Black. Started 3 years ago, and it brings the mainstream entrepreneurship ecosystem here in Portland that's growing and thriving together with another growing group of entrepreneurs, and that's Black founders. As of 2007, Portland was home to just a little over 2,000 Black businesses. As of 2012, according to the census, Portland's now home to more than 4,200 Black entrepreneurs. This event brings together people in the community to come and have a celebration and hear pitches from these businesses. So far in the first 3 years, we've heard from 27 entrepreneurs who've gone on to win amazing awards nationally and locally and to raise more than $15 million for their companies all over the country. Unfortunately, those companies haven't raised much money here locally in Oregon, and I think the opportunity exists right now to take what's important and turn it into what's urgent. Last week, Commissioner Fish and I attended an amazing event that was all about minority makers and celebrating them. It was a great event. It was great to see Portland show up for those folks. Unfortunately, there's an opportunity there for them as well, as more than half of the businesses that were represented don't even have websites. And so I think a lot of the great work that's happening in Portland right now is really around anti-poverty and talking about affordable housing, but we haven't quite jumped into investing more in really creating wealth. The wealth gap for African Americans is growing each year, and we're missing out on opportunities to support them. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work with the city and the county and the state to champion these entrepreneurs. They're doing amazing things. They're changing the world every day, and I appreciate this time to come and talk to council.
Stephen, can I ask you a couple questions?
Yes, sir.
Because you have about a minute left, and you took the time to join us, and thank you. When you and I were at a People's Market last week,
yes, sir.
At the Red, and we got to meet minority entrepreneurs who are chasing a dream, it struck me that everybody had a different story and a different set of barriers they were overcoming. What, in your judgment, is the #1 barrier that the folks that we met are facing in terms of taking their dreams and turning it into a reality?
I think the #1 barrier is really social capital. I've worked with entrepreneurs and been an entrepreneur for the last 20 years. And I think one of the realities of being an entrepreneur is you don't know what you don't know. And the best entrepreneur kind of straddles a line of being smart enough to know something's a good idea, but dumb enough not to say no. And so, you know, I know a lot of these entrepreneurs are chasing, you know, the next paycheck or the next investment check or the next loan, but unfortunately they don't oftentimes have the social capital to be really asking themselves the right questions, validating new markets, and thinking about how they can scale their ideas to grow their margins and grow their business.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Did Larry Quick arrive? No. And then the balance of the consent is going over to November 29th.
Correct.
Right? So
Madam President?
yes.
I'm just wondering if we could do ordinance 1237. It has an emergency clause on it. Is it possible for us to remove that and have the presentation?
1237.
Oh, you're here, right? Julie, are you here for 1237? Oh. Oh, I'm sorry.
Looking to the city attorney, can we?
Right, 1237.
Can we hear it even if we don't vote on it?
So are you looking to amend to remove the emergency clause?
Well, simply to have well, yes, I guess, so we can have make this a first reading.
It is.
Okay,
It's
can
got an emergency.
I look into that and then get back
Well,
to you? Can you give me
I
a
think we
minute?
know the answer. We can always take an emergency clause off.
Sure.
The question is, can we do
Can
it
you-
by 3 votes?
Right now.
Yeah, and that's what the question I just want to check really quick.
All right.
Okay.
So,
thanks.
yeah, it's at the end of the agenda, so can I just look into it really quickly
Sure.
and then get back to you? I just want to check.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's fine.
And just so we're all clear, at least making it a bit clearer.
Can I just, Ben Walters last week reminded me that the presiding officer can actually do almost anything without objection. So if she moves without.
No.
We're talking about stripping an emergency clause off. No, we're talking about please, Joe. We're talking about stripping an emergency clause, and I believe under Robert's rules that can be done without objection.
Well, let's have the city
just
attorney
confirm.
check that. And
Okay.
so my understanding that we're not going to be hearing the 2 non-emergency consent items is just because the sponsors preferred to have it on the 29th?
I'm sorry, which item are we talking now?
1230 and 1231. Those are on consent.
Right, we checked with staff, and they want those on.
They moved it once.
They're moved,
okay.
yeah.
Right.
All right, because otherwise I think Commissioner Fisher, you're also correct that we could have decided to hear them. Right then, I think we're at 1232.
Right.
Please.
Excuse me.
Sorry, 1232, reappoint Lisa Faust to the Open Signal Board of Directors for term to expire November 30, 2019.
Welcome. Julie's not here, but we have staff from the Office for Community Technology. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you. Lisa wasn't able to make it to council this morning because of a prior work engagement, but she did send a statement, if you'd like me to quickly read that.
Yeah, if you could just put your name into the record, please.
Okay.
No.
Oh, sorry. Julie O'Melchuk, and I am a program manager with the Office for Community Technology.
Thank you.
Dear Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners, I am pleased to continue to be your appointed representative on the Board of Open Signal, a Portland Community Media Center. We have seen tremendous improvement and growth at Open Signal over the past year and a half. This has been under the leadership of Justin Harn as Executive Director. With a robust staff and board, we continue to make progress, and I am proud to be part of this team. Sincerely, Lisa Faust.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Would anybody like to testify on this?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mrs. And please come up if you'd like to speak.
I should get some oxygen up there. Be a lot easier.
Welcome.
Joe, can I say something before you start?
Pardon?
Can I just acknowledge that we got an email from you a day or two ago with your comments about the David Douglas event. And A, I want to thank you for sending the email, and B, I want to just say I completely agree with you about the benefits of bringing council meetings to people and to where they are. And many of the people there were people that could not really get out of work or family commitments 9 to 5 on a Wednesday. So it was wonderful to see such a turnout in someone's backyard and to have a council meeting. So I appreciated your email highlighting that.
Individuals for Justice has been fighting for you guys to do this for 10 years. And our argument was exactly what you just said. The people that work have a right to see their council operating, and they can't because they have to go to work. So if you do it at 6 o'clock and you do it at different parts of the city, they get an opportunity to do it and see you. And one of the things that David in communications with Chloe is stressing is you guys don't get the positive word out. Now, if that's true, that would be something that you would want to do. You would want to go to different parts of the city and say, this is what we're doing, folks. You know, you don't do that enough. We don't know what you're doing, and we feel like there's no transparency. So what you did the other night when you went to David Douglas was outstanding. And the school supplied the food. You know, everybody was involved in it. Everybody was happy. It was about 3 parks. I mean, how could you get upset over that? So it was whoever designed it, and I think it was Amanda that was the catalyst in this whole thing, should be congratulated, and the council itself. What I said in the email, you should be congratulated, even though today I'll probably seriously criticize you. When you do something really well, you should be honored, you know? This is not personal stuff. These are issues. Lightning and I just had a discussion about this. We don't go after personalities, and when we do, we screw it up.
Thank you very much. And I'd also like to recognize Pooja Bhatt and Goldan Salazar on my staff who did most of the work on that event. Anyway, we're back to this.
Go back to the agenda.
Yeah.
Our objection is only.
And I think you have to state your name for the record. I'm sorry.
Okay. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. Our objection is that if you appoint somebody to a committee, a commission, somebody that's going to have great influence on the council, they should show up. I don't care if they have other commitments. If they don't show up for this, it's an indicator they're not going to show up for a lot of stuff, because this is important. This is their plea, if you will, to serve the city. And you can't do it from your house. You know, I keep saying, please give me a raise, but I show up. You know, I don't do this from my house usually, unless I'm ill, and I didn't hear that. So Individuals for Justice has pushed and pushed and pushed for these candidates to come before the people that are watching this, come before you, come before the audience that is here, the citizens that have taken their time to come in the rain this morning, which is really difficult. And they don't show up, and they send a letter. You're going to vote her in, I know that. But we're just saying, you know, it should be more important than that. You know, and we're tired of the pirates. We want some thought and say, you know, she should have shown up. Let's postpone this and get her on the phone and say, you want this committee? Show up. And I know we don't pay them any, but we don't get paid either. So that's what we're saying. Either show up or get out and let somebody else do it. That's our position.
So, Mr. Walsh, how does that connect with what you just said about it being difficult for people to take time off work during the day?
Because there are certain things that should be important to you if you're going to serve on a committee. And one of them is to be reset or reaffirmed or reappointed to the committee. That should be an important thing. You know, and I think that Commissioner Fish can understand this. During the week, a lot of times I am ill. Okay? There's a lot of things wrong with me, and my age is getting way up there. This is a very important meeting to me. I rarely miss this. I missed 3 meetings last week that I wanted to go to, but they weren't that important.
Okay, I understand your point.
This is important.
Thank you for
and
explaining.
she should have been here.
Thank you for explaining.
Star Stoffer, I have to echo Joe's concerns in regards to her absence. Whether somebody is wanting to be appointed, reappointed, elected, or whatever, the issue that I have is the same as his. I understand people have day jobs, so do I. People have lives, so do I. We all do, everybody in this room does. But when it comes to being appointed to a position that can have an impact on the community surrounding what you're doing, you need to be there so that people can see your face, see who you are, ask questions, hear your statements. Why should you be reappointed for 2 more years? If you're not going to be available or accessible even in physical form, this is kind of the problem in our society and why things just aren't running properly. My second point is, I just got a nod from the city attorney that it is true that you can remove the emergency clause and hear agenda items and talk about them. And so I'm urging the council to please remove the emergency clause for the agenda item 1233 in regards to the Bureau of Police, and let us discuss that today, since some people are here for that, and it is something that you are able to do.
My name is Mimi Gurman, and I don't know if you're aware that what you do actually, it has effects throughout all of the villages and small little communities around Portland. In St. John's, the neighborhood association is extremely corrupt. They just had a
Mimi, can we focus on this appointment?
I am. When you think that it's okay, or nobody chastises Chloe, or whatever the word is, punishes Chloe for leaving all the time during testimony, when you vote on things like the police chief's assistant, where the police chief wasn't even here to do the ask, when you vote on something where a person right now isn't here for the discussion, all of these things get emulated in other smaller pieces of government, smaller than city council. And I see that. I see that in St. John's. They are emulating what happens in city council on the board of the St. John's Neighborhood Association, which isn't why I'm here. But that is reflective of what happens by what you guys do on the council. When you allow these things to occur, when you take votes when people aren't there, when members of the commission aren't here, sure, you only need to have 3. I understand the rules. But the fact is that people aren't here. The people giving the ask aren't here. The people on the commission aren't fully here when okaying that ask from the invisible people who weren't here to do the ask. You see what I mean? This isn't okay. People need to show up. This isn't just somebody who, you know, has a second job and, you know, she's doing her laundry because it's the only time she has to do her laundry, so she can't be here. This is a position. She should be here. It's not difficult. So I'm asking that if the rules are made to obfuscate truth, that those rules be changed so that truth can come to the table, people can show up, so that truth can be made in our city, that we can pass on truth, we can be honest people with each other, vote honestly for the things that the people of the city want, not just what a few people on the commission want. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I move the report. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Fish.
I appreciate the testimony, and in a perfect world, the applicant would be here. I think particularly when it's the first appointment, they should be here. In this instance, she has served apparently with distinction since 2012 and has been reappointed on numerous occasions. I would treat that, even though I agree that it's preferable to have the applicant, I think when they're first appointed, that's the time we should really focus in on their qualifications.
No,
in this, please don't interrupt. In this instance, she's now, I think this will be her third or fourth term. She's well qualified and comes with a strong recommendation. Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye. Thank you. So, Commissioner Fish, did you want to go back to?
No, we'll go to 1235.
I was just wondering, it seemed like there was some urgency to 1237, or can we just do them in order?
We can just do them in order.
No, we'll do it in order.
That's fine. Then we get to 1235, please.
1235, authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder for construction of the St. John's Cathedral Park Sewer Rehabilitation Project, number E10330, for an estimated cost of $7,740,000.
Commissioner Fish.
Ready for a vote?
Sorry, thank you. A second reading, please call the roll.
Fish.
We had a good hearing last week on this matter. I'm pleased that we're prioritizing replacing old pipes in places like St. John's and throughout the city. This will have an impact on both residents and businesses, so we have done a robust outreach and work with the community to work out the hours in which the work will be done. But we have one of our very best people continuing to work on that, because I think we're going to need to stay in close contact with the community to mitigate the negative impacts of this construction project on our friends in St. John's. Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
As I said last week, the presentation on this was outstanding and very easy to understand. Thank you, Commissioner Fish. Aye.
Thank you.
1236, please.
Amend Public Improvements Code sections on penalty for violation, permits required, and permit revocation terms in support of the Bureau of Transportation right-of-way use enforcement program.
Sorry. Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll turn it over to the Bureau of Transportation staff.
Thank you. And good morning, City Commissioners. I'm Caitlin Ruff. I am the Program Development Manager and the Development Permitting and Transit Group at PBOT. And I'm here today to present to you a code change that would allow for PBOT to adopt a new administrative rule for right-of-way use enforcement. And for some context around what we mean with right-of-way use enforcement, I think many of us can relate or say that we have experienced scenarios such as a bike lane suddenly being blocked by construction vehicles, or sidewalk impassable due to overflow of a cafe or something similar, or a delay in driving or transit travel due to unpermitted work or improperly set up traffic control. And these things do happen despite a lot of great work that various divisions in PBOT do every day to write standards, develop manuals, and issue permits to guide work and community uses in the right-of-way. Unfortunately, when they happen, they can also be dangerous or cause significant delays to the traveling public. Unfortunately, PBOT does have existing code authority to penalize noncompliance and code authority to enforce our programs and our permits. Enforcement is something that we've done in various ways over the years, but until now, we have not had an umbrella program set up to guide us that really tells us how to consistently and effectively conduct enforcement actions. This program really started with our goals, our safety goals, and commitment to Vision Zero. And before I go on, a couple quick things to keep in mind as we talk about this program. It is not enforcement of right-of-way behavior. As we know, that's something that Portland Police enforce, and PBOT partners with on things like the sidewalk management plan and the new pedestrian plaza rules. Those are separate. This also is not parking enforcement. That's handled by Parking Services Group. That's separate. What this is an enforcement program designed to be a tool for existing staff and existing programs to utilize that support code and permit conditions for traffic control, sidewalk cafes, community use and encroachments, and utility and street openings. So I'm going to go over quickly what the right-of-way enforcement program is and provide an overview of how it's been collaboratively developed and shared with stakeholders. We started a working group in March of 2017 that was primarily internal to PBOT divisions that issue permits, but also included consultations with the City Attorney's Office and interagency collaboration, specifically with Bureau of Environmental Services and the Bureau of Development Services, who both have well-established programs for enforcement. We identified the need for a consistent approach across city agencies, and both of these programs have been very informative. As part of education for this update, we've leveraged meetings convened through the Get Portland Moving program, the Working Group, Regional Construction Group, Franchise Utility Group, and more. We sent informational email to our listserv of nearly 1,400 engineers, contractors, and consultants. We have an FAQ and enforcement website, and this has now been included in the current plans examiner. We've been attaching a flyer to electronic and paper permits issued since September and will continue to do so. And last, we're piggybacking education on enforcement with the launch of a new PBOT traffic manual, which provides contractors and other users enhanced guidance on safe and temporary traffic control measures. So why do we need an enforcement program? As I started, there's just a lot more happening in the right-of-way right now. From private construction to city capital projects, livable streets initiatives like cafes and street seats, and more. And with that, we've seen an increase in scenarios that can result in unsafe conditions or failure to accommodate the traveling public. What is our program objective? It's really to support the other complementary efforts that we have going on to keep people moving. It's also compliance and safety. We're focusing on educating those that are doing work in the right-of-way how to do it with safety as their priority. Consistency and transparency in how we implement and interact with the public, and empowering staff. So as I mentioned, this is a tool that will be used by existing programs and staff to drive results, to help encourage and administer compliance in a more timely manner. It's worth noting that in October of 2016, the City Council supported and adopted a new administrative rule for safe accommodation of bicycles and pedestrians in and around the work zones. And this enforcement framework will support traffic engineers in administering that policy.
Can you hold with this picture for a second? Because yes, this is a familiar site in Portland, a construction site where they have moved the fence onto the roadway, blocking the bike lane and also blocking the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. And is the point of this picture that part of your objective here is to crack down on this?
Yes.
Because what this, of course, does is forces bikes into the main lane, which is unsafe. And there's a, if you go through the inner east side, for example, where there's a lot of construction, you run into a gauntlet, veritable gauntlet, mm-hmm, where it seems like construction companies put the fences wherever they want, either blocking bikes or cars or making it almost impossible with pedestrians to navigate the sidewalks. And so you'll be tackling that issue?
Yes. And I should say, I'm here with Ryan Mace, and I don't know if you want to speak to that in any more detail in terms of permit conditions and how this will address.
Yes, so I'm Ryan Mace. I am the utility permitting manager for the Bureau of Transportation. And so yes, the picture here that you're seeing is not in compliance with the new 8.12 administrative rule, which was passed by City Council last October. And so as part of our traffic control requirements and part of the rollout of our new traffic manual, which we are educating the contractors on now, we'll be ensuring that enforcement of that manual will include sites such as this.
Is it your sense that contractors really need to be educated on the fact that they can't block a bike lane? Is this so obscure a rule that in terms of safety or that they can't block certain critical intersections where disabled people gain access and things like that?
I believe that in our older standards, they did not reflect the need that 8.12 required, and we are one of the few jurisdictions in the state that actually has such a rule in place. So our new traffic manual will address that situation, and so the education and outreach is really letting them know what their resources are so that they can safely and appropriately place these things in the right-of-way.
Thank you.
So next, just quickly, how will enforcement actions be determined? This is similar to the Bureau of Environmental Services programs that enforcement actions will be based on a classification system. Class 1 would be the most severe or really unsafe violations, so like what we were just talking about, where Class 3 would then be more for encroachment violations or those that really pose no threat to public safety. This approach does put accommodation for autos, bikes, and pedestrians all on equal footing, and like Ryan was just saying, in support of the Safe Accommodation Administrative Rule. The penalty amounts will be based on the new penalty schedule that is annually adopted, and it was adopted this last June by Council. And what is the process and who is responsible? These are the overall steps that an enforcement action would take from intake to final determination and code hearings if that's applicable. Violations will be found in one of two ways, either discovery in the field via a permit inspection or drive-by, or complaint, which would be via PDX reporter or calling 823-SAFE. We are working to ensure that inspectors and traffic engineers proactively focus in areas with significant construction work, in centers and corridors, or on the Vision Zero high crash network. Inspection will be done by existing public work inspectors, traffic engineers, or individual program staff to verify the issues in the field. And those completing inspection will provide information on required steps to get into compliance and re-inspect as needed. Once the violation has been resolved and required time has passed to allow for either administrative review or appeal, the final determination would be issued. So when is the program effective? The ordinance includes a proposed effective date of January 2018, and that is the end of our presentation. So Ryan or I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
First, just a comment. We have a new system in place now with screens, and Carla, we have our first test on the PowerPoint. It worked on our screens, presumably worked for the public. So,
yeah, I don't think we had any. We've got YouTube problems, but it's
well, that's progress.
It's showing on TV. Yeah.
Because it's when people take the time and the trouble to do a PowerPoint, we want to make sure the public can see it. And so thank you, Mustafa and others.
Mustafa and BTS.
And BTS, yeah. Everyone who's working on these technology upgrades. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anybody like to testify on this item? Please go on forward.
At least two people already signed up, Star Stauffer and Mary Sipe.
And then Ms. Walsh, there's another seat, so you're welcome to come up.
Good morning. I'll just jump right in. My name's Mary Sipe. I strongly support this proposal and these changes. In the neighborhood where I live, in the Pearl District, there's one street where there's so much construction, I can walk along the street on one block, then I have to cross to the other side of the street, go up that block, cross to the other side of the street, go up that block, and cross again because of all the construction sites that are blocking the roadway. Also, another issue that we deal with is the sidewalk cafes. And in the building that I live in, the income restricted building, which I would say out of 200 units, probably 150 of the people are disabled or elderly. We have many people in wheelchairs, scooters, and walkers. The restaurant on the corner in the ground floor of our building, in the summer, the tables, I've gone out with a measuring tape and I've checked the code, and they're like this close to being within the parameters of meeting the code as long as the chairs are pushed up against the tables. But then once people start sitting down and then they add their Burmese mountain dog sitting besides them, it's blocked. The sidewalk is blocked. And one of the things I would like to suggest is that they go out and inspect before and after giving these permits, because some of the things that I think don't get taken into consideration is that you might measure from the building to the corner, but there is a utility pole And so in this particular instance, there's 2 utility poles, I think, for the streetcar. And so you can't get by, even though they're not necessarily breaking the code, but the configuration doesn't accommodate it. And I also would like to suggest that perhaps they, when they go out and they measure, maybe they give guidelines to the restaurant owners as to the dimensions of the tables and the chairs that would meet the requirements, because the first owner of this one building restaurant, he bought tables that were way oversized, and he spent a lot of money on them. The other thing is I would like to ask, how many inspectors are we going to have available to be inspecting when there are complaints and compliance issues? Because I know with the noise control office, they have essentially 1 inspector, and there's no way that they can stay on top of the codes. And is this just going to be another code that we can't enforce because we don't have the staff to go out there and enforce it? And again, I think the penalties should be sufficient to influence and motivate the owners and the construction companies to comply with the code. Thank you.
Good morning. Again, for the record, my name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. No, just don't do this. One of the things that really makes me nervous is when government is just perpetuating rules and regulations that they can do. You can do this, and you're going to do it, probably. However, think about this. When I walk along Hawthorne and I see those little shops, they have tables outside, I know for a fact that I'd be willing to bet a moker that the majority of them do not have permits. They just put them out there to try to make a living. That's the problem that you run into with this stuff. You know, it seems to me that if you wanted to do something, you would have volunteers to go out and talk to the owners of these places and say, hey, Mr. Construction Guy, everybody's complaining. We can't get past your construction. Why don't we work and do something? It is unbelievable to me sometimes that I'm on the side of the Business Alliance. In this case, I am, because I also see the probability of you extending this not to tables and chairs, but to people camping on the street. And I get very nervous with that one. When you start putting people in jail because you write them tickets and they can't pay the damn things, and then they get a warrant and they go to jail. That's government overreach. That's not thinking about it. That's just thinking about the little piece of action where it inconveniences us to walk across the street and go around. And then make a phone call to City Hall and say, do something about that. And then City Hall says, we're going to do that. And they send a volunteer down and they say to the boss, knock it off. And if it's the city, they're going to do it. Because you do have the power to go after them, and they know that. So use it. But for God's sakes, don't interrupt the business. And don't hurt them. That's what I'm saying. You write tickets, it hurts them. Don't do it. Just send in volunteers. I'll volunteer one day. 2 hours.
Thank you.
Because I'm old.
Starstoffer. A couple of things. I'm rereading this. PBOT Working Group. Who is that? How much is that costing us? Interagency collaboration. Exactly with who? And how much is that interagency collaboration costing us? GPM and outreach meetings. I mean, how many different working groups and meetings do we need? Permit flyers. What's that going to cost us? Website and email, who is running that and what is the cost of running this website and email? Where are the emails? What are you discussing in the emails? And exactly what's happening that's not happening in these working groups? Also, are these work groups going to be made public since this pertains directly to the public? Ongoing education about what? It seems to me that PBOT may not be the best qualified to be educating the public on right-of-ways, safety standards, and such things because they can't even seem to understand that putting a wheelchair van accessible spot on a hill where there's a double hill where the person in the wheelchair would also have to cross max tracks on a busy street just to participate in city government. These don't seem like the sort of people who are on the ball enough to be educating the public about right-of-ways and safety. Director's team, and then there's city council. How many people need to be on this? So it's going to cost the city a bunch of money. So in order to recoup this money to, I don't know, justify the ridiculous, irresponsible use of our tax dollars in the budget that you all have to work with, that's exactly what this seems like. It's like all these construction companies that get together at the end of their fiscal year and really ramp up their construction so that they can justify their budget for next year. Where's this money coming from? Why is so many different collaborative groups, meetings, emails, discussions, and all this need to happen if like, you know, Mr. Fish said, this isn't that obscure of an idea? So why do we need all of this stuff to make this happen? What's with all the bureaucracy here? And then, like Joe said, the people that pay for this are specifically the small business owners that cannot afford to pay fines to make up where the city is failing them to begin with. This city and the infrastructure in this city is just not set up for the heavy population that it's taking on. And that is not something that these local business owners need to be taking on as a burden. And PBOT is certainly not qualified to be educating the public about the proper use of right-of-ways and public use and how people are going to be able to get around, considering they don't even know the difference between not being ADA compliant and being ADA compliant. So this, I would say no as well. This seems ridiculous to me, and it's a terrible waste of money, time, and energy. Thank you.
Discussion? This is a non-emergency ordinance. It passes to second reading. 1237.
Accept a grant in the amount of $103,471 and authorize an agreement with the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission to increase network capabilities for fire stations.
You're going to make the motion.
So City
Yes,
Attorney, please tell us what the rule is.
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate your patience. You can vote to remove the emergency ordinance and then hear the ordinance today, and then it would move on to second reading, which I think would be 11/29. If you, at that time, you can put the emergency clause back on so that it goes into effect, or you'll have to wait 30 days for it to go into effect, but you can decide that then.
Thank you, that's very clear. Commissioner Saltzman?
So I would move to remove the emergency clause from
Second.
item 1237.
Please read, call the roll. I'll get to that in a minute.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
I will do a summary at the end of what we're going to do. Aye. Commissioner Saltzman?
Yeah. The Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission has a great program where they take a portion of franchise fees that are paid to it by cable companies and telecommunications providers, and they have a technology fund that they make grants to nonprofit institutions and to upgrade their technological capabilities. And so, believe it or not, our fire stations are not the most technology savvy pieces of hardware around. So this grant will enable us to provide high-speed cable access at all of our fire stations, all 30 of them in the city of Portland. So we're very thankful to the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission for this program and for the receipt of this money.
Thank you. Anybody like to testify on this? All right, then since it's now a non-emergency ordinance, it goes to second reading. So let me address thank you very much, the question of item 130, 12:37. That was Mayor Wheeler's item, and he wanted it taken to December 6th. I know he will want to hear your testimony, and so that's why we're going to do what he just asked.
33.
Yes, 33 and 37, really. So, yes, so 12:37 is on December 6th, 12:33 and 34 are on the November 29th. This is all as clear as mud, isn't it? I would suggest you visit the...
1237 is actually the item that you just heard.
Sorry,
So-
thank you, yes.
So because we've taken off the emergency clause,
Right.
we can probably go to the 29th. now.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for helping out here. And if you're confused, you can go to the City Auditor's website, and it'll all be summarised. So 12:33 and 12:34 are going to November 29th. We do not have any meetings next week due to lack of a quorum. We don't have an agenda for this afternoon or tomorrow. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and we are adjourned.
Before 2 o'clock.